Welcome to my series on Pleasure Beach Experience YouTube, Mike Mondays, where I discuss various aspects of theme parks and a little bit about myself. Good afternoon and welcome to another Mike Mondays. And this week I'm talking about one of my favourite older parks, sadly no longer in existence. It's Camelot. A bit about the rides, the reason why I enjoyed Camelot, and just a bit in general. There will be probably some of our younger viewers may not even remember it, probably never went, may not have even been there. You see, it's now some years since the park closed. It's about 6 years, I believe, since it closed. I think it was the end of the 2012 season, possibly 2013. Can't remember, but I remember that because they cited the Olympics as a reason for lack of profits to the year it closed, so it will be 2012. So why did I like Camelot? The simple reason is nostalgia and memories. Most of us as enthusiasts had a park, maybe two parks that we went to as kids that stick in our mind. Now for me, the one park above all else was Camelot, which I probably first went to when I was 3 or 4. I know I was very young. There is a picture of me surfacing somewhere when I was basically at like nursery. It used to be the day out from nursery we'd go there. For those who don't remember, the theme literally was Camelot, so Knights of the Round Table, Sir Arthur, Lancelot, all that sort of thing. Now from a theme aspect, immersive will probably be the word, because everything was spot on. Absolutely every little bit of theme in the park was spot on to its actual theme. Some may remember the big sort of thing that was different about it. It had the big jousting arena in the first half of the park. It was a park of an unusual layout because it was of really 3 sections. There was the entrance plaza, which housed well, it had about 4 names, this particular coaster. You had it was the Beast, Venom. I think it actually had, I think it was actually called Space Mountain at one point, I read. This was very long time pre-Disney, long time pre-Disneyland Paris. But it actually had a coaster called Space Mountain once upon a time. The other bit was one of the later investments was the entertainment centre, the castle. There was also memorably the Sooty show, for anyone that remembers Sooty and Sweep and Sooty and Co. So that was the entrance plaza. You basically went in, you had caterpillar capers to the side, just a big apple coaster. You had the log flume, yeah, everyone loves the log flume. But you had the log flume there. Like I say, you had one other coaster and the entrance to Pendragon's Plunge. Now the second piece of the park, basically from there you went down a big steep slope, which sticks in my mind as whenever it rained, that slope was just like a river, because it was really steep. It was also worked quite well when they decided to put, if anyone remembers Pendragon's Plunge, it was basically a dinghy water slide ride. Quite good fun. Which led you down to the like I say, the arena was down there. The whole area was circled by the Dragon Flyer coaster, which I will cover in detail later because it was a one of the kind. There is literally not another coaster of that type in the world, to my knowledge. More on that to come. Like I say, you had a couple of other family rides, food, the Galleon was down there, and then there was another bit up another hill because it was on a funny topology, that particular park, to the back area, which is where most of your thrill rides were. So A lot of people, a lot of Schwarzkopf fans will know Tower of Terror, Nightmare in recent years. There was a few other rides. There was a driving school there. So yeah, really good theme ride, really good theme park. Like I say, I went there from a very young age, so I remember quite a bit about the park. We do have, I know, members who worked there, which were quite knowledgeable in the park. If you're from the north of England, and you're like my age, you will probably have been there. So yeah, that's why I enjoyed the place. It was just really unique, and like I say, it's that thing of your childhood. Most people are naturally drawn to things they remember about their childhood, and Camelot, trips to Camelot was a biggie for me. So onto the rides. Like I say, there was a few. It had a lot of stalwart rides. A lot of rides that lasted, that just stood the test of time. Never did anything particularly special, but people enjoyed them. And because the park was aimed at quite a wide range of ages as well, they had to have this variety there. So like I say, there was one that I know, the coaster I mentioned, it's had several names. It actually existed at the park for about 20 to 25 years all in, because the park opened in the early 80s, as I said, closed in 2012, and the park did actually sell it in the end, but tried to sell it for a few years before closing. And I remember it most fondly as being Venom, which was its re-theme. It was called The Beast before that. And it actually, I thought, again, I was a kid, so coasters always feel bigger than they actually are when you're a kid. Plus it was in the dark. I thought it was a massive coaster when I went on it when I was a kid. Turned out I actually saw a picture of it outside the building it was in, and it turned out it was 20 foot tall. But because of the darkness, had this element of speed in it. The Venom theme, actually the logo was similar to the Nemesis Eye. If anyone knows the Nemesis Eye, the O in Venom was basically that. And various snakes and reptiles in the queue line. The queue line all got a re-theme. Prior to that, it was called The Beast. I don't really remember a lot of it back then, because I probably only went on it on the Beast as a handful of times. Like I say, there was Caterpillar Capers, which is a big apple coaster. The amount of times I rode that coaster is probably into the hundreds, because of the amount of times I went, and because you always used to get about 3 laps on it. Obviously, it had the log flume, which was really nothing special. Said log flume is still in operation. Oakwood bought it and they rebuilt the theming, but kept a similar, had like a mountain facade on it. Like I say, it was just one drop, 50 foot maybe. Wiggled around down the drop, quite a short one. The coaster that would stand out, I mentioned there was a unique coaster, and that was the Dragon Flyer. Now this, to my knowledge, is the only coaster in the world powered by an internal combustion engine. So it was the only coaster that no one wanted to sit on the front. I can't remember now if it was petrol or diesel, but from the smell of it I suspect diesel. It was the only coaster you never wanted to sit at the front because it stunk. You just choked off the diesel. But it, like I say, it was a powered coaster. Basically ran around the main area at the front of the park. Never went particularly fast. Had a couple of airtime kicks and a couple of fast turns. But like I say, it was just a novelty. And again, you'd probably get a couple of laps on it if it was quiet, which quite often was at Camelot. There you had the Galleon. I mentioned Pendragon's Plunge, which was 3 water slides with sort of rubber dinghies on them. And by that I don't mean the rubber dinghy rapids. They were actually sort of dinghy boats. 2 manner, you went down the slides on. If I remember rightly, 2 were covered, 1 wasn't, and they were all about the same speed, but they intertwined down the hill. The big coaster that was always there for a long time was Tower of Terror. It was a Schwarzkopf Silver Loop, I think it was, a Silver Arrow, something along those lines. There aren't many of them about. I think there's 2, maybe 3 in existence. That particular one went up to Loudon Castle in the end, until Loudon Castle closed, and I think it is still doing the rounds, but I'm not sure where now. As far as I know, though, it is still in existence. Could well now be in South America, I'm not sure. But it was classic Schwarzkopf. If anyone remembers it, it basically had a castle tower in the middle which encased the loop. So you used to drop down into the tower, did the loop within the tower, which used to catch a lot of people out because nobody realised the loop was there unless you'd been on it before. Other than that, classic Schwarzkopf, high G-forces, fast swooping turns. There was like a zigzag through the loop, and then its party piece was the massive helix at the end of it, which, again, if anyone's been on Olympia Looping, will be the classic case in point, because that's got one of them where it's got a helix towards the end that just spirals down towards the ground, and you actually end up probably no more than a few feet off the ground by the end of it, and then slams into the hardest brakes you've ever seen. Again, classic Schwarzkopf, but very good coaster. It then got that, I think it was on loan, it was a loan coaster or something like that. It's on some sort of rental agreement. Got replaced by, the name of it escapes me now, but it was a Pinfari Looper, so not all that great. That didn't last very long. That actually ended up at Southport when New Pleasureland opened. And finally there in that place was Nightmare, which was the Schwarzkopf, like a kind of a, well, it had a mine train front on it, but it was relocated from Japan. I never actually went on Nightmare because I never went in the time it was there. It only lasted about 3 or 4 years before the park closed. But it is still to this day sat there. If you drive up the M6 past Charnock Richard, you can see it off the motorway still. And I remember Tower of Terror. You could always see Tower of Terror from, you could always see the motorway from Tower of Terror. I also have just the name of the other coasters come to me. It was the Gauntlet, the Looper, but it was crap. It was utter crap, as most Pinfaris are. Other rides was a unique one. I don't think there's too many of these ever existed, and it was actually built by Vekoma. It was called the Rack, and it was a flat ride. In its seating layout was reminiscent of a sky swap. So 2 banks of probably 20 seats facing each other in like rows of 4 or 5 maybe. But then it basically used to the 2 parts would split apart from each other. It's something you would really have to look up to be able to explain it, because like I say, I don't think there's too many of them were ever built. But that was a really good ride. The other ones, there was a couple of family rides that were really good. You had Kingdom in the Clouds, which was it was kind of like a Ferris wheel. It's actually still at Southport, and I think it's probably still called Kingdom in the Clouds. That was actually my mum's favourite ride because of how tame it was. My mum wouldn't go on anything above, well, basically anything that went above about 10 mile an hour, and nothing that went over above about 10 foot, unless it wasn't dropping you at any great speed. So she really enjoyed that. Also had a Zamperla balloon race as well, which obviously I remember quite well. So on to the other thing it did really well was shows. Like I say, it had the jousting show, which although quite cheesy, was really good to watch. Really enjoyable. That formed the main basis of the sort of the Camelot the Knights of the Round Table theming. Like I say, it was cheesy, but it was good. There was a couple of dark rides. It escapes me now what the ghost train type ride was called. Like I say, it's a long time since I've been there, but there was a really good, quite corny ghost train ride that I remember. And the other show that sticks in my mind, the park, you may or may not know, was owned by Granada for quite a while, and Granada actually had some grand plans to really bring the park up, and I'll cover it in a few moments about one of the rumoured plans they actually tried to install there at one point. But as part of that, it then meant they had access to various IPs. For those who don't know, that means intellectual property. It's basically having access to sort of certain brands, and in this case, one of the ones that was very popular, and this was probably early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. One of the ones that was very popular at the time was when Sutty & Co. got an overhaul with Corbett Jr. in the 90s. As a result, there was actually a Sutty show where the puppets all had like night costumes and things on. But I always remember the end of that was water guns came out, and basically if you were sat in the first 3 rows you got soaked off these water guns. Really enjoyed it, and I used to love Sutty anyway, so great one. I mentioned about Granada and their plans. There was a rumour that they actually tried to have built a Vekoma inverted boomerang there, of the ilk of Stuntfall at Park Warner, and they just basically could never get planning permission for it. It's still yet to come to fruition, but there's a long held rumour that the council in that area want to build a housing estate on that land, especially as in at that time it was in the housing boom, really, basically that period, and everyone just wanted to build housing estates, and it was supposedly optimum land for it, which is ultimately would have contributed to one of the reasons why it closed. There are other reasons as well, but nothing's ever really been concrete, so you can only speculate there, and obviously we have to be very careful in what we say on that, because it is speculation. I wouldn't ever go as far as accuse that council of deliberately blocking everything, but that is a rumour that exists strongly about why it closed down. There is the park, it basically is still there. There is various videos of it. It used to be quite easy for urban explorers to get into it. The security's been ramped up in recent years. The site basically got gutted of most of its assets. Quite a lot of the rides got sold off. A few have ended up at Southport because it was only up the road. There was a rumour that the Dragon Flyer was actually intended to go to Southport. Never materialised, but there we go. But yeah, there's a lot of people have a lot of memories there. They did get an investment towards the end. Oh, there's a ride I did forget about actually that people will remember. It had 2 variants. That's Excalibur. The original one, Excalibur 1, as was an inverted pirate ship. Now I never actually went on that because when that particular ride existed, I was too young to have gone on it. However, they did then replace it with Excalibur 2, which was basically it was a pendulum ride. I probably don't really need to explain the Excalibur theme, but it basically looked like a sword on the front of it on both versions. The later theme was one which, rather than being of a pirate ship, it was more of a maelstrom type ride. It was more of a gyro swing type ride, but not actually a gyro swing. So seats pointing outwards, ride console all the way round, or at least 2/3 to 3/4 inverted, with a spinning section as well. Always a really good ride. Never seemed to have a queue. And they did towards the end build a Maurizona spinner around the same time that Towers built theirs. In fact, I have a feeling it actually opened the same year as Spinball Whizzer. Now this was a standard version one. This was a plain one rather than the custom layout that Towers had. But it's still a really fun ride, actually.
It's down in Germany.
Is it?
Yeah, Sky Park.
Ah, there's that same place that's got Bling?
Yes.
Ah, right, yeah. I had a feeling it had been moved somewhere. So yeah, that's the rides. I've mentioned a bit about the scenery. The scenery was always ace. On busy days in its heyday as well, you had actors floating around for additional theming. Now that tailed off in the later years. Budgets, costs, lack of profits sort of curtailed that. But in its heyday, when, like I say, when Granada had it, the place we know made money. And Granada really wanted to make a go of it, because I remember when their first investment came in, and like I say, it was around the very late 90s to early 2000s. It was things like they built the entertainment complex, which, if you have seen any pictures of it, was the castle, white castle straight in front of you as you went in the entrance. That had a dodging track in it and a kids play area and a couple of food courts. But they spent an absolute fortune on it, and eventually I think they got frustrated with not being able to build much and moved on. It got sold to the more recent owners. So that's Camelot. That's my memories of it. No doubt many of our viewers will have their own memories. I know Coaster Force organised a couple of trips there in its latter years. It was quite often done in collaboration with a trip to Southport because of the proximities. For someone driving a long way, you wouldn't go just to Camelot. If you were coming from London, you'd want to do Southport or Pleasure Beach to actually make it worth your drive. But yeah, if you have any memories, please do send them in. And of course, if you've got any pictures, now I will do my best to find that picture of me when I was a kid there, but I can't promise anything because I don't actually know where it is anymore. So that's Camelot. As ever, if you have any questions, if there's anything further you want to know about the place, like I say, I remember it quite well. I do have contacts who worked there at one point, so I can probably get in touch with them and ask them about various things. Anything you want to know, ask me, leave it in the comments, write a comment. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again.